We're going to put a new shaft into an old fairway wood. There's a couple of special things you need to know about this. Let's find out. Welcome back to the golf shop. Jim McCleary, most awarded certified club maker, club fitter, where we talk about club repairs, club reviews, and club fittings. If you would, swing, hit that bell, subscribe, and then that way you get more of these videos when they drop. All right, so we did a fitting for Seth, and Seth brought in some really classic 3-woods. And what he brought in was that. All right, a Sonar Tech 3-wood. Those of you that have a few whiskers like I do will realize that the Sonar Tech was they called it the driving cavity, which was this guy right here. The driving cavity. And was one of the very first, was super hot 3-woods. And they were, right? And they were very hot. If you can tell, they're not tremendous in size, all right? Not tremendous in size. And they had actually kind of a tall face for that size. Look at that, tall face. And they had a really neat little black finish on them. And the real trick here is that they didn't have, see how it's just painted all the way to the end? They normally you see where it's silver about 1/4 of an inch up. And I believe that's so you don't scratch the paint when you go to put the ferrule on. All right, so this is where ferrule prepping and how to do this really came into effect. Now on the last video, I really concentrated on doing some for irons. Well, we're going to try it again on this one. So we're going to take out a graphite design red ice. Graphite design red ice. That's been around a while. All right, so we're going to take this guy off. Now, important in this day and age, the paint wasn't as resistant to the heat as it is now, right? It just wasn't resistant. So we've got to apply the heat very, very gently around the outside. And what we're going to do is the same thing as always. We're going to melt down the ferrule. We're going to pull it back so that the shaft puller has a ledge to sit on so it won't scrape the paint. So everything here we're doing is about protecting the paint. Okay, so let's pull a shaft. All right, pulling the shaft. Butane torch, my trusty dusty knife. It's the hide knife. I believe if you guys are looking for a hide knife, if you go to the Amazon store page for McGolf, we've got one sitting on there for you guys to get. Hey, if you remember, actually, this just came to me, that Amazon's having a Prime Day. I've never heard of that, but they're having a Prime Day where a lot of stuff is going to be on more discounted, I guess is the way it would be. So you go take a look out on the site and see what you find. So let's get rid of a ferrule. All right, so I got it. I don't know if you can see it, but there you go. So we're just gonna go around there. We don't want it to flame up like it's trying to do. All right, got it nice and soft. This is really hard to do up this way, but we'll see what we can pull out. Look at that. Alrighty, so what did that just tell you? If you look, there's no collar. All right, no collar. So that's going to be a different issue altogether. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to heat this guy up, and then I'm going to throw it into my shaft puller, and then I'm going to come back and show you this stuff. All right, got pulled out, and you see there's a bunch of gunk in there, and we've done pretty good on this. Now let me clean this out quick. All right, now when we're talking about paint on a fairway wood or even on a regular wood, now you've heated this thing up, so the outside's pretty hot, and a lot of people will jump on trying to polish it up really quick if they had any junk or stuff on it, and that's admirable. However, keep in mind, depending on what you're trying to clean it with, you could ruin the paint, meaning you could take it off, because this thing is soft now, right? All this is soft, and it's hot and it's soft. So you go to push it in onto something that's fairly aggressive, and this paint's going to just you're going to take off the shine, you're going to take off the paint, and it's going to look awful, okay? And I've seen guys that have done this, that they've done that, and what they've done is they you know, that 1/4-inch circle that we talked about, is that they've actually ground it down to the center to kind of give it a different look, and so that they could cover up a mistake. We're not doing that here. All right, so we're letting it cool. I've cleaned out the inside. You see this little thing hanging off here? That's some glue. And what this has is there we go. It's got it's coned. It's a chamfer. It's about a 30 to 45 chamfer in there. Allow glue to set in there and kind of protect that, what would be a shear point. Okay. So now we've let it set a little while. It's cooled off. Now we're going to buff it. Now, what you guys have always seen me do in previous videos is that I used the unstitched buffing wheel that was next to my belt sander, and I used the yellow wax, the yellow wax, we call it Glanz wax. It's a high grit polish, and so what we did is we got it there. All right, look at that guy. Now we're talking, right? Now the other part is that I worked over the bottom. I leaned into the bottom pretty good. You can tell when you're doing it because it gets hot, right? Check that out. A little bit different, right? And on the edges, nice, it's shiny-er. All right, so we're gonna let that cool, and once it's nice and cool, then we'll go into the building of the club. But this Boxes to Builds was more about the intent of preserving the paint, what you can do when you're pulling it out, when you don't have, you know, a lot of room to work with, and what to do after you've pulled it. All right, and that's what you saw. So we'll put it together with the new shaft, and I'll show you what that is, and then we'll talk about a completed club. It took a day or two, but we got the shaft in the Sonartec driving cavity 3-wood for a customer. And you know, I told you when we got this in, there's going to be a little difference to it. So what you're looking at is typically right about up into this neck of the woods, it's silver, so that when you finish the ferrule, there's really nothing to damage other than the silver, which is, you know, just regular stainless or whatever the metal might be of. And normally, and you can see it's a little rougher. It's not like a polished area. Well, this is painted. So how do you do that? How do you do that part? Now, I just did a ferrule finishing one on another build, and it'll be over here. But what I didn't go over is something about like that. Well, because you don't see it hardly anymore. Well, now here it is. So a couple of ways to go about this. One, I still have my tape. We use the felt belt that's over here because it really doesn't damage the paint, hence the reason why I like it. However, if you guys don't have that kind of setup, here's what you can do. So you want to put a piece of tape around here. However, that's pretty short hosel. So what I did in the past was that I would take and just rip a piece down the middle, and I would get as close as I possibly could to the ferrule, get it nice and tight, and I wouldn't overlay it too much because you make an egg shape. Alright, so there you go, all the way around. Alright, then what I would do is, if you had a belt sander and you had the paper belt, then this would be really good, because you would know to stop just about the time you saw the tape being hit. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is Emery Cloth. All right, you would put this guy in a vise, and just like your shoe shining, and you go all the way around it. And again, you could probably tear this guy down the middle, just like that. That way you'd have two of them. This is a very, very light, you know, it's Emery Cloth, very, very light grit. and you go back and forth again until you start hitting on the tape. The tape is kind of a go no go gauge on am I close or am I not. And then you would shine it with acetone, and if you had enough, you could smooth it out. And then we'd put it on the buffing wheel, and then we would smooth it all out. And that's how you would do it, right? So I'm going to do it my way, but I just wanted to show you guys at home that if you don't have all those tools, different ways of pulling that off. All right, there you go. That's it. Take this off. Now I'm going to finish it, and we'll come back and I'll let you see it again. There we can get in there. Okay, that's what it looks like. So just one more thing to show you guys in order to, when you get something that's not of, the most modern era. The Sonar Tech in the day, it's kind of a taller 3-wood face. It's a little smaller than what we're used to seeing nowadays. But when this thing was going, this was the deal. And it's still working for this golfer here, so we're going to keep it. So it's just a matter of cutting and gripping, which you guys have seen plenty of that. And so as always, hopefully you liked it. Check out the show notes if you got any questions, and let's see your scores go low.